that a person who is intent on invoking, let him be intent on invoking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the exalted with 4 things. So when you invoke Allah, you want to gain the maximum benefit from the dhikr that you do, from the Quran that you do, so that it isn't just, you're doing gymnastics with your tongue. It isn't just something that you're doing without thinking. He says that let him be intent on invoking Allah the exalted with a heart that is present. That you try your utmost to be completely present with what you do. Istighfar, what are you doing? Why are you doing istighfar? You remember, you sit down and you're doing the istighfar, you think to yourself, what did I do today that necessitates istighfar? Oh, I shouldn't have said this. Or maybe I did this. Or maybe I thought this bad thought about that person and قريت نفسي على ذلك, and maybe I shouldn't have done that. So you think to yourself, why are you doing this? And then when you seek forgiveness, do it with a state of complete humility. Just be aware that, if someone says, if one of my students, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلْ الْأَعْلَى, but if a student goes to a teacher, and they're saying sorry for something bad that they did, they've just been talking in class and causing a noise, and they come afterwards and they're like, all smiling and really happy, say, oh, I'm really sorry that I did that, and they go off and talk to their friend, they're shouting, and you know that they don't mean it sincerely and they're just being rude. Whereas if someone does something wrong, that same student comes up afterwards and says, look, I'm very sorry that what I did, and I know I shouldn't have done it, I won't. You see the sincerity in that person's heart. Their heart is present with you. They understand what they're doing. So seeking istighfar, for example, with that presence of mind. The Salihin, every single night, they would take themselves to account, hisab. They would literally sit there and think, what did I do today? And they would seek istighfar for it. When you say Salah on Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you should be aware of what that means. What are you doing? You should have the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam remember his shama'il, remember what he looked like, remember how he acted, remember how the Prophet ﷺ used to always smile. The Prophet ﷺ used to be extremely generous. The Prophet ﷺ used to be, if he was with people, he always used to be seen the tallest. If you see him initially, you'd be filled with awe. If you spoke to him, you'd fall in love with him. The Prophet ﷺ used to completely turn to a person in his entirety and be present with them. The Prophet ﷺ was the most humble of people. He was the kindest of people. He was the most generous of heart. You have these qualities present in your mind and in your heart when you say Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi. When you say La ilaha illallah, imagine those words in front of you. And imagine what that means, and remove from your heart anything from the dunya or anything that might be distracting you from the dunya, because truly, honestly, that is what really matters. La ilaha illallah. As the sha'ir, as the Prophet said, the most truest thing a poet ever said is Ala kullu shay'in ma khala Allah batilu. Everything other than Allah is in vain, is vanity, is nothing. So being present. But you know what? Someone could come and say, well, khalas, what should I do if I constantly do dhikr but I can't be present? I try and then it doesn't work out. The Salihin say, keep doing dhikr. For one of the students of a great Hadrami Shaykh goes to him and he's complaining. He says, I do all of these adhkar, but I'm not present with any of them. And the Imam says to him, say Alhamdulillah that Allah has ornamented one of your parts with His remembrance. And Imam Ibn Ata'illah Secondary, he says, don't let that. He's in his hikam. He says that don't be in a state of, don't be dismayed if you're in that state. Keep doing it. For Allah has the ability, maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remove you from the state of ghafla in dhikr to a state of complete presence in dhikr. And even from the barakah of dhikr, doing it even if you're not present, even if it's literally just saying it without really truly being conscious of what you're saying, that will have benefit. Even that will have benefit. And constantly doing these spiritual practice time after time after time after time, you'll begin to be present. You'll see yourself slowly turning. You'll see changes in how you approach the world, how you see things, how the interactions that you have with people around you. Dhikr is it's a door of all good. And he says, with courtesy that is abundant, one should have great adab. Because when one is remembering Allah, أَنَا جَلِيسُ مَنْ ذَكَرَنِي, you are in the divine presence. Allah will mention those who mention Him. This is enough. If you say La ilaha illallah, you know that for certain that Allah is mentioning you. We know that. فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ. Remember me and Allah will remember. If you remember Allah, Allah will remember you. That's one of the reasons that the Salihin, whenever a calamity would strike, would happen, they would be grateful for it. And the reason that they would be grateful for it, because they know that at that time, when they make dua, when they make dhikr, they are completely and utterly focused on Allah. When poverty, Imam al-Haddad says in Risalat al-Mu'awana, he says, when poverty strikes, he says when poverty strikes you, let you greet it with ahlan bi shi'ar al-salihin. Welcome to the sign of the salihin, this poverty. Why? Because khalas, it completely removes any distractions from the world. Well, something that really struck me once, I was, and this is a non-Muslim, the Al Gore in his book, in his his famous documentary, An Inconvenient Truth. He speaks about, because I show this documentary to some of my students when we discuss global warming, and so I've seen it several times. But one of the things he mentions in the documentary is when his son, I think it was his son, had an accident or became sick or something. But anyway, he was hospitalized and his life was threatened, or is going. He says suddenly everything. And this was a busy man. Everything that was on my calendar that I had to do on all of these great plans, he says, there's this. It was completely blown away, and everything became unimportant. Everything became frivolous. To that which was important to him at that time. For a believer, this is our state. If one is in a state of constriction, then you should be completely and utterly focused on Allah. It turns you completely so that you are with Allah. And what Allah will do to his servants is that He will put them in situations where He will put you in a situation, and then Allah will constrict it, and suddenly you think, oh, this was a way out, but now it's blocked, but I still have this way out, and He'll constrict that. Oh, suddenly there's only two ways out. He'll constrict that. Suddenly there's only one way. He'll constrict that till you see absolutely no way out. Why? So you can turn to Him and say, Ya Allah. And in that moment, that is where serious presence, this is where the elevation that comes from Allah. And that is where the openings come. And so, having courtesy, having adab with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with your dhikr, with your remembrance, and being completely present to Him, is the source of good. And he goes on, an attention that is sincere. And this is one of the ways of sincere, being in a state of sincerity to Allah. Don't do it in front of people. Do it by yourself. Keep a time between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it's only you and Him. And a concentration that is piercing. So this is your dhikr, this is what you're doing. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from the dhakireen. Allah kathiran wa dhakir.